Hello and welcome, everybody, to Monster Monday. My name is DM Gallibond, and this is Monster Monday for November 9th, 2020. So, think about one of the most iconic creatures in all of D&D. Something that's so iconic it's even in the name of the game itself. A dragon, right? But not just any dragon. The fire breathing, crimson scaled, greedy, powerful, avaricious red dragon. That is what we're going to be talking about tonight on Monster Monday. We're going to look a little bit at the history of the red dragon, and we're going to look at one particular red dragon that appears in one of the published adventures for D&D 5th edition. So let's go ahead and get into the show. All right, I am your host, DM Gallibond. As always, we want to start off by giving special thanks to Mo over at the Tabletop Bellhop. And Mo is the OG when it comes to all things tabletop games. You can find all kinds of information about the hobby, ways to buy different types of games, all kinds of websites and blogs dedicated to rules and gameplay. And then you'll also find a whole bunch of podcasts and streams related to tabletop games. And as we get towards the end of the show tonight, there will be a segment for Q&A. So if any questions come to mind as we go through the history of the Red Dragon tonight, go ahead and drop them in. I may not know the answer, but I will try to get the answer and get it on the comments when this goes up on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. All right, so there is a particular red dragon out of Dungeon of the Mad Mage called Asteranthor. And Asteranthor is kind of an odd red dragon in kind of an odd setting in an odd module. Dungeon of the Mad Mage is the great delving dungeon underneath Undermountain in Waterdeep, supposedly started by Hallister Blackstaff, the original Blackstaff of Blackstaff Tower fame, and the this Asteranthor is connected to spacefaring Githyanki, who have created a dimensional portal between an asteroid space station and one of the levels of Undermountain. So it's kind of a weird oddball thing, and this Asteranthor is the mother of 6 young red dragons that are all basically thralls of Githyanki and used by the Githyanki as mounts. And this Asteranthor basically just crawls all over the asteroid and doesn't consider it a lair, but has some special spell casting that other red dragons in 5e don't get because of her affiliation with the Githyanki. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about red dragons and Asteranthor in particular. We've already talked a little bit about how she lives on this asteroid outpost called the Stardock, connected by a magical portal to a part of the Undermountain known as the Crystal Labyrinth. And her spellcasting abilities is in lieu of having lair actions. And when we get to looking at her actual stat block a little bit later, we will see what those spells are and what she is able to do instead of having lair actions. So they give her the same CR and they give her the same, hit points and ability scores as a normal red dragon, but because they have taken away her lair actions, she gets these innate spellcasting abilities. I think if they tried to give her both, it would wind up actually making her more powerful, and they'd have to bump up her CR. So what about lore? What about lore of red dragons in particular? This is always sorts of things that you can drop, bits of knowledge that you can drop to your players, like if they're trying to figure out what their characters might know about a red dragon. Well, the odor of sulfur and pumice surrounds a red dragon, whose swept back horns and spinal frill defines its silhouette. Beak snout vents smoke at all times, and its eyes dance with flame when it is angry. So, as they get sort of near a red dragon, they might you might describe the smell in the air before they're even aware that they're onto it, or that they're close to it. They are mountain masters. They prefer mountainous terrain, badlands, and any other locale where they can perch high and survey their domain. Preference for mountains brings them into conflict with hill dwelling copper dragons from time to time. They are arrogant tyrants. They fly into destructive rages or act on impulse when they are angered. They are so ferocious and vengeful that they're regarded as the archetypical evil dragon by many cultures. And no, 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 they do not wear orange wigs. They're not that arrogant. Status and slaves. Okay, red dragons are fiercely territorial and isolationist. However, they yearn to know about events in the wider world, and they make use of lesser creatures as informants, messengers, and spies. They are most interested in news about other red dragons, which they compete with constantly for status. So now this is important as lore for your characters. If they ever come face to face with the red dragon, and they are trying to avoid being eaten. If they know anything about other red dragons and they can compare the red dragon in front of them favorably to that other red dragon, oh, well, now you're going to stroke their ego. Now you're going to make, oh, well, hey, maybe I want to keep you alive so I can hear you say more nice things about me. Uh, that's that's a weakness that red dragons have, and as a DM you can have as much or as little fun with that type of thing as you want, and you can just sort of let your characters get carried away. But remember that dragons have a pretty decent intelligence, so if they start trying to sort of make fun of the dragon with false praise, oh, that could turn that right, you know, just on a snap, could turn that, puffed up ego from flattery into, red hot rage of anger. And they are obsessive collectors. Red dragons value wealth above all else, and their treasure hoards are legendary. And covet anything of monetary value and can often judge the worth of a bauble within a copper piece at a glance. Red dragons have special affection for treasure claimed from powerful enemies that it has slain, exhilarating or exhibiting that treasure to prove their own superiority. So um, you can, you can also tell a lot about a red dragon by looking at the treasures it has on display. And maybe if you have like a bard or somebody that has like a really good history score, and there's specific pieces that have belonged to specific powerful wizards or kings or enemies that dragons or other enemies that the red dragon may have slain, they might notice this in a treasure hoard. And once again, if the characters are in a position where they're having to fight for their life, it's like, oh, you defeated the very powerful. Oh, clearly you are so magnificent and so terrifying and horrible. And how may we serve you? Well, okay, now you got to be careful about that because if you ask how you can serve a dragon, they may take you up on that. So just have your players be really careful about that. Now, in D&D, every monster has a type. All creatures fall into various different types. And red dragon is a dragon. That's a type of creature. It's so iconic that they have their own type. So they're large reptilian creatures of ancient origin and tremendous power. True dragons, including the good metallic and the evil chromatic, are highly intelligent and have innate magic. Also in this category are creatures distantly related to true dragons, but less powerful, less intelligent, and less magical, such as wyverns and pseudo dragons. Now, talk about here where they have innate magic. Now, the innate magic of the garden, if you can call it garden variety chromatic and metallic dragons, is going to be their breath weapon ability, which is kind of a magical ability, and their ability to fly. Because of their size and their weight, um, you know, flight is just sort of something that shouldn't necessarily be possible. It's like a bumblebee on an enormous scale. If you talk to biologists, they will tell you that a bumblebee is so large and its wings are so small that it should not be able to fly. And yet, of course, it does. So, the dragons, much the same way. They are so large and so heavy that they should not be able to fly, but hey, because of magic, they can. All right, now here's where we're going to go take a look at dragons throughout the history of D&D. We're going to look through several of the old um, editions and see how the stats of this monster have changed over time. All right, so let us see. We're going to move that here. Oh, goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Okay, we are going to just a moment. Lately it has been doing this stupid thing to me where it has just made me very annoyed. Okay, all right. All right, so now we're going to go over here and we're going to go here and we're going to go back. Yes, there we go. All right. Apologies for the technical difficulties. All right, this is the rule cyclopedia. This is from original D&D. And the stat blocks for monsters were very different back then. They didn't have full stat blocks for all of their ability scores. They just basically talked about some of the specific items. So there were 3 categories of each dragon. There was a small dragon, kind of young, a large dragon, considered kind of an adult, and a huge dragon, which was the ancient and most venerable, you know, specimens of their species. And also, if you're not familiar with the old versions of D&D, armor class worked backwards from the way it does in 5e. So the lower the armor class, the better the armor class. So a small red dragon had an armor class -1, and a huge red dragon had an armor class -5. Um, Basically, your gold standard for armor class as a player in this edition of the game was armor class 0. So thinking about something that is so well armored that it has an armor class -5, that tells you how hard it is to hit. So to give you an example, a first level character needs a 19 on a 20-sided die to hit armor class 0. So for a small red dragon, you'd have to roll a natural 20 on every attack just to even hit him. And you'd have to roll theoretically a 25, which, because you didn't have attack bonuses, you really couldn't do. So you had to be higher level before you could even hit a huge red dragon or a large red dragon. They had 10 hit dice for the small, 15 hit dice, 20 hit dice. Okay, you say, wow, that sounds pretty weak. But the breath weapons on these guys worked differently. When a dragon breathed, it would deal, you didn't have to roll for the damage because it would deal as many hit points to everything in its path as the dragon has. So let's say that you had a maxed out small red dragon. 10d8 was 80 hit points. So when it breathes, it's going to do 80 hit points to everything it breathes on. Now, that is also true for every time it breathes, it deals its current hit point value. So the first time it breathes in a fight, if it hasn't been hit, maybe it does 80 hit points to everything. When it comes around to its turn again, if it's been hit several times and it's down to 65 hit points, well, the second time it breathes, it's going to do 65 hit points of damage to everything. And then if it doesn't use its breath weapon on the third turn, and by the time it comes around to the fourth turn, it's been whittled down to, let's say, 35 hit points, then the third dragon breath is going to do 35 hit points of damage to everything. So as a DM back in this edition, you really wanted to use the breath weapon first. And make fill everybody at the table with complete terror that they were going to have to make a saving throw against 80 hit points of incoming damage on the first round before they could even take an attack. So now on the ground, it can attack up to 3 times, and when flying, it can attack up to 6 times in a round. So these things were really, really powerful. It has a saving throw like fighter level 10, morale of 10, treasure type H. They're chaotic. Now, another thing to remember about this edition was so poor that they only had 3 alignments. They had lawful, they had neutral, they had chaotic. The axis of good and evil alignments did not exist in this edition. So now if we look at some of the particular attacks, the red dragon, here it is, small, large, and huge. Its bite or crush does 4d8 damage. 48 plus 4 for a large, 48 plus 8 for a huge. And its claws, kicks, wings, and tail will do 1d8 each, 1d10 plus 10 plus 1, and 1d12 plus 2 each. And then you'll see the spell casting that they get. They get spells all the way up to 5th level spells for a huge dragon. 5 first, 5 second, 4 third, 3 fourth, and 2 fifth. Now the dragons use the same spell table as magic users, which was the archetype that became the wizard in later editions of the game. Okay. Yeah, breath weapons, and the breath weapon was a cone for this guy, and the cone, let's see, what, yeah, and they also had 50% chance of talking and 10% chance of being asleep. The cone was 90 feet by 30 feet for a small red dragon. So that's another reason why they were so feared. It's because if you can imagine, if you're anywhere within 90 feet by 30 feet of this dragon, you're taking that full 80 hit points of incoming damage on the first round. And then if you think about the huge dragon, that's 180 feet by 30 feet. So that's just an enormous area that it's going to fill up with fire when it breathes on you. and it's so they were truly fearsome, truly terrifying, truly awe-inspiring monsters back when they were first introduced. Now, there was also rules in this game about subduing dragons, and so you could theoretically subdue a dragon, although with any kind of dragon like a red dragon that was chaotic, uh, believing that you actually have a dragon subdued is like making an ill-considered wish of a genie, because that dragon will use the terms of its subdual against whoever has subdued it, and will take the first opportunity to try to take revenge on anybody that thinks they can uh, thinks they can subdue a monster like that. Okay, so now let's move forward in time to first edition D&D or AD&D. So armor class for red dragons, Draco Conflagratio Horribilis. They have an armor class of -1, hit dice 9 to 11, percent chance in lair, and these things have so much treasure that they have 3 treasure types. Free attacks 1d8, 1d8, and 3d10. 3d10 is the bite, by the way. Breath weapon plus possible magic use. Chaotic evil. They're 48 feet long. Chance of speaking is 75%. Magic use is 40%. Sleeping is 20%. And the cone is 90 feet long by 30 feet wide base diameter. Speaking red dragons are 40% likely to be able to employ spells. For each age bracket, it's able to use an additional spell. First 2 ages, the red dragon gains a first level spell. Next 2, a second level spell. At the 5th and 6th ages, a third level spell is gained. And the last 2 stages, a fourth level spell is gained. Thus, an ancient red dragon will be able to employ 2 spells each, first through 4th. So if you go back up to the beginning of the dragon, entry, dragons pass through eight age groups in their life. Very young is 1 to 5 years, so 1 hit point per die. So they don't gain extra hit dice; they gain extra hit points per hit die is what they gain here. So young dragon, 6 to 15 years, 2 hit points per hit die. Subadults, young adults, old, very old, and ancient. So they get 401 plus years old. They get ancient, and they have 8 hit points per die. So notice how in this edition of the game, as a DM, you don't roll to see how many hit points the dragon has. You determine what age group you want it to be, and that tells you how what how many hit points it has. All right. So an adult age and older dragons radiate powerful aura, which causes fear reaction. 5e, they have that aura that they can use at will, but this is just an always-on thing. So it says all creatures under 1 hit die, as well as non-carnivorous creatures of any sort, which are not trained for warfare, will flee in panic. So that basically means if you ride close to a dragon on your just plain old riding horse, it's just going to turn around and run away, and it might throw you in the process. Such a route will be made at the fastest speed possible and will continue for 4 to 24 turns. Now, a turn is a unit of time being 10 minutes. So when it says it will run away, it'll run away for anywhere from 40 minutes to 240 minutes to get as far away from this stupid dragon as it can. Creatures with fewer than 3 hit dice must save versus magic or be paralyzed with fear or panic as above. Creatures with 3 or more hit dice will fight at a penalty of -1 on their hit dice unless they also save versus magic. Creatures with 6 or more hit dice automatically disregard the aura. And the aura of an adult, old, and very old dragon is not as powerful as that of an ancient dragon, so saving throws applicable to their auras at +5, +3, and +1 respectively. So a second level fighter, normally having to score 16 or better to save against magic, would gain a bonus of 5 on a saving throw versus an adult dragon. And then sleeping dragons can only be found in their lair and is always awakened on hearing a loud noise, talking, shouting, forcing a door. It will awaken if attacked, also awaken on a roll of 6 on a 6-sided die. And if a sleeping dragon is attacked, its bonus gets a bonus of +3 to strike it, but as soon as the dragon is awake, that bonus is lost. So then it gives you, different vulnerabilities that the different resistances and vulnerabilities that dragons have based on what kind of breath they use and all of that kind of stuff. And once again, we have information on subduing a dragon. And they give us a whole example of how a dragon is subdued. All right, so now we go to 2nd edition. And we have our red dragon here in 2nd edition. Now we get a little bit of a clue about their intelligence. They have exceptional intelligence, range of 15 to 16. Armor class is -3, the base armor class. Movement is 90 feet, flight, movement of 9 squares, flight of 30 squares, and a jump of 3 squares. So that means that squares being 5-foot increments, it can move across the ground at 45 feet per round, and it can fly 150 feet per round. So these things are very fast, very large, but also very fast. A Thaco, 7. So now what is a Thaco? That's what it needs to roll on its attack roll to hit armor class 0. You remember I told you that armor class 0 is kind of the gold standard for a PC? Well, a red dragon only needs to roll a 7 on a 20-sided die to hit an armor class of 0. So if you have a worse armor class than that, it's even easier for the dragon to hit you. Has 3 attacks and special attacks, so 1d10, 1d10, 3d10, again for the bite. The red dragons are born immune to fire. As they age, they gain the following additional powers. Young, they can affect normal fires 3 times per day. Juvenile, do pyrotechnics 3 times a day. Adult, heat metal once per day. Old, they can cast suggestion once per day. Very old, they can do hypnotism once per day. And venerable, they can detect gems, kind and number in a 100-foot radius 3 times per day. And oh, looky here, we have the age category, and there are 12 age categories for dragons. And this is the body length and the tail length. Okay, so let's just look down here for a, let's do it halfway. The body length of an age category 6 red dragon is anywhere between 80 and 99 feet. And then it has an additional 68 to 87 feet worth of tail. And it has an armor class of -5. Its breath weapon, now by this time you did have to roll damage on a breath weapon. Its breath weapon, 12d10 plus 6 damage. 2 first and 1 second level spell. Magic resistance 35%. Magic resistance, what's that? You want to cast a spell? Before you can even before you can even or before it even needs to make a save, you have to roll percentile dice. If the percentile is lower than 35%, it doesn't even need to save, it just completely resists the spell altogether. And then again, 3 different treasure types and 15,000 experience points. You go all the way to the top level, and now you're getting to sort of, well, now you're getting like to the size of an A380. Um, Body length is 187 to 183 feet, with a tail that's an additional 162 to 171 feet. So basically, the thing is longer than a football field or a soccer pitch. And the breath weapon deals 24d10 plus 12 damage every time it breathes. Armor class -11. So good luck ever hitting it with anything. And then let's just, for giggles and grins, let's see what is the dragon age categories here. So starting with hatchling, going to great worm, then hatchlings are 0 to 5 years. Great worms are 1,200 plus years. The hit die modifier is -6 to +8. Combat modifier is +1 to +12. Fear radius, they pick up the fear radius at 15 yards as a young adult, out to 50 yards as a great worm. And then fear save modifier, -4 for a great worm. So you're making your saving throws at -4. Then, yeah. So, okay. So now here's interesting things about the flight characteristics. A dragon can stall, just like an airplane. So any dragon flying near the ground can halt its forward momentum and hover for 1 round, but it must land immediately thereafter. Once stopped, it can attack with its bite in all 4 legs, use its breath weapon instead, but this rarely happens since dragons can breathe on the wing. If a dragon stalls in an area with lots of trees or loose earth, a draft from its wings creates a dust cloud of the same radius as its fear aura. Creatures in the cloud are blinded and no spell casting is possible. The dust lasts for 1 round. Okay, so yeah. Oh, your wizard there, all the dust. Yeah, your wizard's too busy coughing to cast any spells. So, yeah, that's 2nd edition Red Dragons. Now let's take a look at 3rd edition Red Dragons. We have challenge ratings came into play in 3rd edition. So you're used to challenge ratings from 5e. A Wormling Red Dragon had a CR of 4. The Great Worm has a CR of 26. Treasure is triple standard. Alignment is always chaotic evil. And then here is the Red Dragons by age category. How many hit dice, hit points do they have, and what are their ability scores? So for a Great Worm, is colossal in size. It has 40d12 plus 400 hit points, an average hit points of 660. It has a strength of 45, dex of 10, constitution of 31, intelligence of 26, wisdom of 27, and charisma of 26. Now, if you have a bunch of players that are giving you a hard time as a DM in 5e, I suggest you go and throw a 3rd edition dragon at them. That will stop them in their tracks and make butter melt in their mouths, and they won't be giving you any trouble anymore. The base attack or their grapple score is plus 40 for their base attack and plus 73 to their grapple score. So yeah, Mr. Barbarian, try to get out of that grapple. The attack bonus is plus 49. Its fortitude save is plus 32. Reflex save is plus 22, and will save is plus 30. The breath weapon does 24d10 damage, and the DC to have it is a DC of 40. And the Frightful Presence DC is 38. If you want to save against its Frightful Presence, yeah, roll me a 38 on your D20, please. Oh, sorry, you didn't roll that. Okay, you're afraid of this dragon. And then it gets all these kinds of abilities, and notice the caster level and spell resistance. So caster level, as a Great Worm, it has the same kind of spells as a 19th level wizard, and then its spell resistance is 32. So in order to resist its spells, you have to roll a 32. Or to save against its spells, you have to roll a 32. As on a saving throw. Special abilities. So now notice here, the DR20 magic, that is damage resistance 20 against all attacks that are not magical. Now, if you're going to be fighting a dragon, you probably have some magic weapons, so that may not matter that much. But if anybody is so foolish as to try to attack a dragon without magical weapons, the first 20 points of damage it just completely ignores. They don't even count. So if your damage roll is a 21, congratulations, you did 1 hit point of damage to the dragon, because the other 20 don't count. So that's the way dragons were in 3rd edition. Well, now 4th edition, as you guys may know, 4th edition made a complete left turn from the evolution of D&D and went in a totally different direction. So these stats are probably kind of meaningless when it comes to most other editions, but it's interesting to look at these anyway. A young red dragon is a level 7 solo soldier. And this level 7, they put levels on their monsters, and that was kind of like a CR. There's a formula that you use as a DM. You figure out what level your party is, and then depending on how you want to build your encounter, you pick the appropriate level monster, and sometimes you put a monster group together, but solos are generally intended to be the only monster that your whole party faces. So initiative +8, hit points 332, bloodied 166, armor class 25, resist 15 fire. So again, the first 15 points of fire damage it just completely ignores. The adult red dragon is a level 15 solo. 750 hit points with a bloodied value of 375. The elder red dragon is a level 22 solo with 1,050 hit points and a bloodied value of 525. And then the ancient red dragon is a level 30 solo, initiative +24, 1,390 hit points, bloodied value of 695, armor class of 48. And yes, armor class of 48, that's because in 4th edition, your ability to hit things, you kept like getting extra bonuses to hit things like every other level. So it's kind of ridiculous. It's like by the time you get to 15th level, you have like a plus 30 to your attack roll. So, and then it just keeps going up from there. And that's just as a normal character that survives to 15th level. Then all of its stat blocks, the skills it has, those types of things, and whatnot. And then let's see, dragon. Where's the dragon? Beginning of the dragon block. Okay, so let's see. Chromatic dragon, day-to-day mentality, the dragon gods. Okay, well, yeah, all right. It doesn't have all of the same types of things in it as the other editions do. Okay, now let's look at 5th edition, and we're going to start by looking at our title monster here today, which of course is Astiranthor. Astiranthor. I believe that's the way you say it. Astiranthor. Armor class 19, 256 hit points, 19 d12 plus 133. 40-foot flight, climb, 40 foot on the ground, climb 40 feet up vertical walls, and fly 80 feet in a round. Strength, dex, con, pretty decent scores. 27 strength. Obviously not nearly as high as some of those from earlier editions. 21 charisma, 25 constitution. Legendary resistance. So if the dragon fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead, and that is up to 3 times a day. And for Astiranthor, she gets innate spellcasting. And she can 1 time a day cast Alarm, Detect Magic, Gaseous Form, Misty Step, Pass Wall, and See Invisibility. Now, See Invisibility is 7th, Pass Wall is 5th, Misty Step is 7th, Gaseous Form is 3rd. Yeah, so up to 5th level spells there. And then the dragon can use its Frightful Presence. And each creature of the dragon's choice that's within 120 feet and is aware of it must succeed on a DC 19 Wisdom save or become frightened for a minute. Has its 3 attacks. 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. The bite is a plus 14 for 2d10 plus 8 damage. Claws plus 14 for 2d6 plus 8. And the tail attack is plus 14 for 2d8 plus 8 damage. And then its Fire Breath recharges on a 5 or 6 on a 6-sided die. Fire Breath is 18d6 damage. It's a 60-foot cone, which is 30 feet wide at the end. And then it gets legendary actions. So it can make a wisdom or perception check and can use a tail attack, and then it can do a wing attack for 2 actions. And the wings are 2d6 plus 8 bludgeoning damage if you fail a dex save and you're knocked prone. All right. So that is Astiranthor. Now, I went ahead and pulled up the adult red dragon, here, just for comparison's sake. And the dragon normally also can get lair actions if it has a lair. But Astiranthor, as an individual, does not get lair actions because that asteroid base of the Githyanki doesn't count as a lair for it. So on initiative count 20, losing initiative ties, dragon takes a lair action to cause one of the following effects. Magma erupts from a point on the ground the dragon can see within 120 feet. Every creature in the geyser's area must take 66 fire damage if they fail a DC 15 saving throw. They can cause a tremor in a 60-foot radius around the dragon. Each creature other than the dragon on the ground must succeed on a dex save or be knocked prone. And volcanic gases form a cloud in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point the dragon can see within 120 feet. The sphere spreads around corners, its area is lightly obscured, and make a DC 13 con save or be poisoned if you're in that cloud of gas. So those are things that it can do in its lair. Every round it can choose to do one of those. And yeah, so that is what red dragons are like. And now we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about using red dragons in a campaign, or using them in campaigns. So this is all based on 5th edition, and this is based on an adult red dragon. So how could you build an encounter around a red dragon, and what level of party is this appropriate for? So what I like to think of is if you're going to build a hard, which is a challenging encounter with this creature for a party of 5 PCs, where would you use it? Well, if the PCs are level 11, a single adult red dragon is right at the threshold to be a deadly encounter. So, I mean, it's right smack dab at that level. So you throw an adult red dragon at level 11 party, you should expect to see the party use most of their resources. 1 or 2 of the PCs may go unconscious during the fight, but the PCs will probably win at the end of the day. Now, level 12 or 13 party, that becomes a hard encounter. And so that's kind of the sweet spot. If you want it to be something where they feel like they've been in a fight, but they're not about to have to roll up new characters, throw that at them at level 12 or 13. If the party is level 14 to 16, it's a medium encounter. Now, if you want to bump it up to make it a hard encounter, you can add an additional young red dragon to that fight, and it will make that a, borderline deadly down to a moderately hard encounter if your party is level 14 to 16. And then if the party is level 17 to 20, go ahead and make it a mated pair of adult red dragons. So you add a second adult red dragon and let both of them fight against the party at the same time. That will turn it into a borderline deadly for level 17 party to a moderately hard encounter for a level 20 party of 5 PCs. If you have more PCs or you have fewer PCs, you would need to adjust those numbers a little bit. All right, so placement in campaigns. As a CR17 monster, red dragons are the alpha predator of evil dragons, except for some special rare types. There are a few named dragons that are more powerful than an adult red, and then obviously there's ancient reds, which are almost never encountered in campaigns, unless you happen to play with an extremely sadistic DM. in most campaigns, they would be the boss or sub boss of whatever enemy is pulling the strings of your campaign. Uh, and just think about what kind of creatures or beings could be powerful enough to keep an adult red dragon in check. That list is not going to be very long. It might include deities, might include demigods, and it might include extremely powerful wizards or even very powerful liches that might look to stoke a dragon's ego by giving it wealth and power of its own, and yet demonstrating that it has the power to destroy the red dragon if the dragon ever turns on it. So, um, now if you do ever find a dragon that is somehow subjugated by a being that is anything less than a god, then because of dragons' ego and pride, you might actually be able to use that to your advantage as a party. If your enemy is the dragon's boss and you can convince the dragon how it has no business being subjugated to such a pathetic creature as its boss, and you can really make the dragon think that it's more powerful than its boss is, then you may not ever turn the dragon into an ally, but you might get the dragon to be willing to go and attack the boss with you. Now, the thing your party would probably have to keep in mind is, okay, we hope that this fight is going to weaken the dragon, so that as soon as we finish killing this boss, we turn around and we finish off this stupid dragon. Because if we make this dragon think it's more powerful and then we help it, oh, it's going to lord that over us if it possibly can. So that would be something to think about as a player and something you could toy with as a DM. Thinking about how your players might approach an issue where you have a red dragon that is in fact either in service to a more powerful creature or enslaved by a more powerful creature. Uh, and what you could do to sort of, play off of its greed and its ego. All right. And how could you reskin a dragon? Now, you may have noticed looking all the way back at first edition, at the first edition game, you may have noticed that they made reference in there to gem dragons. Now, over the course of D&D, this thing has been around since the 1970s, so it's 45 years old. This game is, and there's been tons of supplements and tons of books and tons of adventures written, and there have been all kinds of different dragons. But what has come down to us in 5th edition, what they have published so far, are just the chromatic dragons, which are the evil, the black, the red, the white, the blue, etc., etc., etc. And then the metallic dragon, so the gold dragon, the silver dragon, the copper dragon, the bronze dragon, etc., etc. So think about not only the gem dragons, but think about maybe creating alternate categories of dragons. So let's say elemental dragons. So what about if you take the stat block for a red dragon and turn it into a lava dragon? Okay, this is a dragon that comes from the elemental plane of fire. It can still have the fire breath, but then have its skin kind of be molten lava. And then do something like apply maybe heat damage. If you touch the dragon, you're going to take heat damage from it. So you might have to play around with the CR a little bit and bump that up a little bit, or maybe bump the hit points or the armor class down a little bit if you want to keep it as a CR 17. But you can do things like that. Um, to turn it into a different type of creature, something that your players have never seen before. So when I talk about reskinning monsters, a lot of times I will think about reskinning them as a completely different type of creature. But when it comes to dragons, they are so iconic and they are so powerful and so awe-inspiring that it's kind of hard to imagine reskinning a dragon as anything other than another dragon. So you kind of have to think, all right, what type of dragon would I make this? So that's where I come up with the idea of elemental dragons. All right. So now normally we have a Q&A section, and I don't see any questions in the chat just yet. So I'm going to go ahead into the wrap up, and then I will come back and look at the Q&A again. All right, I have been your host, DM Gallibond, and I do 3 actual play D&D games right here on this here Twitch channel every week. Sunday afternoons, it's a planeswalking game, 5th edition, called The Walker of Waterdeep. Thursday nights, it's another 5e game called The Sword Coast Chronicles. It's our love letter to the published 5e campaigns. And then Saturday night, we go old school. This is the Lost Mine of original D&D. So what I've done is I've taken the Lost Mine of Phandelver, that adventure that was for the starter kit of 5e, and I have completely replaced all of the monsters and all of the characters with original D&D monsters and original D&D characters, and we are playing through that adventure with original D&D rules. So all of those types of things we talked about before, where you have the THACO and where you have some of the other types of things that we were looking at with the original Red Dragon, all of the monsters have those kinds of things in it, and the character mechanics play slightly differently than they do in 5e as well. Combat uses a different system. For example, in combat, you don't roll for every individual monster and character, you roll for each side. And whichever side wins combat gets to do everything first. So if the players win, every single one of the players gets to go before any of the monsters do. But if the monsters win, then all the monsters get to go before any of the players do. So, and then because it's only rolling for each side, you re-roll initiative at the top of every round. So you can get a case where the monsters go first, then the players go in the first round, and in the second round, the players win initiative, so they get to go again before the monsters get to go again. That's kind of interesting how that all works. All right, so I don't see any questions, so I will just go ahead and wish everybody a good evening. Thank you all for hanging out. Please subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing here. Follow us on Twitch. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. I have a whole bunch of D&D content out there on YouTube for your viewing enjoyment. And I will end, as I always do, by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.